everybody. We'll go ahead and get started with the next meeting here. So before we get into the monitoring schedule stuff, I'm just going to go over some reminders. These are the same reminders that I've presented the last couple of years, but I think it's just good to kind of go over them regularly to keep them fresh in everybody's minds and to loop in new staff. I know there's been several new additions to the family here. So I went into more detail about these back in the 2022 coordinated monitoring meeting. So the text in red here is just the timestamps to the location in that presentation. If you want more details, I'm just going to run through these. So occasionally you're going to want to make sure that you check for firmware updates on your field electronics. So like your SONs, your flow meters, tablets, etc. Make sure that you remove batteries from your equipment during long storage periods to make sure that they don't leak and damage the equipment. Make sure that you're conducting regular SON maintenance according to the manufacturer's documentation. And when you're doing your calibrations, your specific conductance in air should read less than 3. If it doesn't, there may be some minor cleaning that you can do. Make sure that you're not cleaning anything too aggressively because that could damage the conductivity sensor constant, and that would throw off your readings. If you are using an electromagnetic weighting rod flow meter like the OTT Hydromet or the Hawk, you're going to want to occasionally zero out or /calibrate that flow meter. Again, according to the manufacturer's instructions, on those flow meters, you're going to gently clean that sensor face on the flow meter. So there's like 3 or 4 little dark like metal dots around the front end of that sensor head, and it needs to be cleaned regularly, but again, very gently. If you're using a tablet, laptop, or a meter, the display meter display, sorry, to record your flow measurements, make sure that you're downloading those and saving those files on a regular basis. So we have to maintain these for a minimum of 7 years as required in the QAPP. Field comments and days since last significant precipitation are very important data. So we like to have those, make sure that you're reporting those. Days since last rain is either less than 1 or any other number. So if it's raining while you're sampling, it's less than 1. And we can go up to however many days it has been since it actually rained. And let's see, so also make sure that you're conducting your monthly temperature checks on the SONs and the barometric pressure checks on the displays if they have a built-in barometer. If they don't have a built-in barometer and you're using an in-office barometer, like one hanging on the wall, you have to check that against a weather station as well. If you're not using a barometer at your place, you're getting that barometric pressure from the NOAA weather station. You don't have to worry about all that. So going on to drought conditions, which we potentially could be going into here in a couple months. When we're sampling on the reservoirs, the stage and the percent full are very useful data points. They're somewhat analogous to using flow measurements or obtaining flow measurements in the streams. They should be reported for every event, but especially during the drought conditions if the data are available, because the data on this Water Data for Texas website, it's not available for all reservoirs. Also, if you are unable to launch a boat or cannot get within 400 meters of the site, you're going to report the regular event information, the stage and percent full, and then there's another parameter indicating that reservoir access was not possible, and also take records or take photos for your records. For streams, we have 2 dry and no flow conditions. So if you're at a stream, this drought data is very, very important because all streams are presumed perennial unless they're proven otherwise. So we need to transmit any information about intermittent or intermittent with perennial pools to TCQ because that has an impact on the standards that are applied to those streams. So if the stream is completely dry, absolutely bone dry, and there are no pools within 400 meters of your station, then you're going to report all of the event information and at least a flow severity with a value of 6, which means dry, and the day since rain. You can report any other information that you have parameter codes for, like weather conditions, like things like that. And again, take photos for your records. Now, for a no-flow situation where it's, if you have water in the stream, but it's in disconnected pools, then we have a flow severity of 1, which is no flow. So you get to your site. If there's water within 400 meters of the site, you're going to look for the largest pool in that area. If it's at least 10 meters by 0.4 meters deep, then we're going to report a flow severity of 1 and collect all of the parameters that you usually would and report the pool dimensions. So if the largest pool is not 10 meters long by 0.4 meters deep, then we don't collect water quality samples, but we do still report the flow severity with a value of 1, things like day since last rain, and the pool dimensions. And again, photos for your records. So when we're collecting this pool dimension information, the length, width, depth, and the length, width, depth, TCQ does prefer a physical measurement, and if we do collect that data with physical measurements, we're going to report that to 2 significant figures. If you cannot get down into the stream to make those physical measurements, you can make a visual estimate. When you report that data, it's going to be reported to 1 significant figure. All right. So sample depth and water column depth, 2 different numbers. The sample depth is information for the event file. So that's part of the when and the where the sample was collected. So it indicates where in the water column that sample was collected. The water column depth is a data point for the result file. So that's how deep was the water where you physically collected your sample at. So we keep notes to ourselves in our field data sheets to help us remember, because there's different rules for how deep the water is. So on the left here, we have an example of our hard copy form. So in this example, we're going to say we had a water column depth of 0.4 meters. Because that's less than a half a meter deep, we're going to be collecting the sample at 1/3 of that depth. And so that will be reported as our sample collection depth, the event file data point, as 0.13 meters. And then we've got a little diagram of where we're actually collecting in the water column. Over here on the right is an example from our tablet, our electronic data collection form. So in this sample, or in this example, we'd be collecting from a bridge. So we don't know the depth, and we're going to leave that water column depth result data point null. We're not going to submit that data point. And then we're going to collect our samples from 0.3 meters deep, and that 0.3 is what's going to go onto the event file. When we are in reservoirs, we need to make sure that we're collecting profiles for the sonde parameters only. I know a couple of the partners do top, middle, and bottom chemistry as well, but that's not common. So in this first example over here, if it's between 1.5 and 3 meters deep, we're going to be taking a profile at 0.3 meters from the top, at the middle depth, and at 0.3 meters from the bottom. Moving into the middle, if it's greater than 3 meters, then we're going to be taking our first profile at 0.3 meters, and then at 1 meter intervals, all the way down to 0.3 meters from the bottom. There's some rules here. So if the bottom is greater than 0.3 meters from your last interval, so in this example, the depth is 10.7, we did our last interval at 10, then we're going to back up a foot off of the bottom and take our last profile at 10.4 in this example. So if your bottom is less than 0.3 meters from your last interval, then you're just done at that last interval. So we would just be taking it at 10. All right, and then all the way over to the right here, if your site is always greater than 18 meters, then after the first meter interval, you can increase your interval distances to 2 or 3 meters with the same rules as for the last profile. So for example, here we've got the 21.4 meters deep. We're taking our last measurement at 21.1. Couple of things you have to make sure that you do is you cannot change your interval distances. So you couldn't take a measurement at 1 meter, 2 meters, 5, 7, 9 meters, etc. You want to be consistent, either 2 or 3 meters always. And those must be consistent with your other events at that site. So you're always doing the same distances between the intervals. So here's another example. If your sample depth doesn't conveniently line up with your last interval. So in this example, we would have a measurement at 21 and then our final measurement at 23.7 because, or 23.2 because our sample depth was 23.5. I don't think this applies to any of our reservoirs. So all the profiles that we generate are likely going to be 1 meter intervals. I don't know if we have any sites in our basin that are always at that depth or greater than 18. Does anybody have any questions so far, or TCQ? Did I make a mistake? Because I think that this is how I interpreted the SWCM guidance. I just want to make sure that y'all agree with that. So if it's wrong, just feel free to jump in here and let me know. You feel free to unmute yourself and jump in. Okay, and so data submittal. So a couple of years ago, we updated our data submittal timelines. TCQ requires that we submit our data to them 3 months after the closing date of the 3 time periods that they've defined. So these are the 3 time periods that TCQ has defined. So in order to meet that deliverable deadline, we began requesting that you send your data to us about 1.5 months after that closing date. So that gives us 1.5 months to process the data and work with you if we have any questions about it. So it's very important that we receive your data on time and that any communications that are generated during that processing of the data are responded to in a timely manner. And so this is really, really important because this just ensures that TCQ has a manageable flow of data entering their data management process, which they do several other QC steps and really looking at the data before they upload it into their statewide database. From my understanding, the assessment for the biennial integrated report is basically a constant ongoing process. So as soon as they finish one integrated report, they're planning and starting working on the next one. So our adherence to the schedule keeps that assessment running smoothly and on time. So it starts at the bottom, goes to the top, and helps everybody out. Now, there will be some occasions where a portion of the data is running behind schedule, and that, due to things like lab instrument issues, long holding times for metals, and any other unforeseen circumstances. And if that occurs, we just need to let TCQ know, just so that they're kept aware of what's going on our end. Basically, the point is that we don't want to fall so far behind that we're dealing with a huge data set, or that so much time has passed that any issues or details that may answer a question that we've had or found during data QA has been forgotten. So we try to keep all of this stuff dealt with as freshly as possible. It just makes the whole process a lot easier. All right, so now moving into the coordinated monitoring portion, we're just going to go through each entity and see if there's any changes that have been made. So I've just got here each entity's map and then just a high-level summary of the monitoring that they do. So we've got quarterly monitoring at 8 sites for the city of Arlington. Let's see. Okay, we've got monthly monitoring at 30 sites for the city of Dallas Lakes Group. And then they also collect metals twice a year.
No changes, Angela.
I'm sorry, say that again?
There's no changes.
Okay, for Dallas?
Correct.
Okay, City of Dallas Trinity Group, the river group, we've got quarterly monitoring at 3 sites. All right, DFW Airport, we have got quarterly monitoring at 6 sites.
No changes.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, excellent, thank you. All right, City of Fort Worth, we've got monthly monitoring at 8 sites.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. City of Frisco, we've got quarterly monitoring at 8 sites.
Yep, that looks right.
All right, thank you. City of Grand Prairie, we've got monthly monitoring at 7 sites.
That's correct.
All right, City of Irving, we have got bi-monthly monitoring at 9 sites. Lake Livingston project, we've got twice a year to monthly. So there's a wide range of monitoring frequencies at 21 sites and yields at 1 site. North Texas Municipal Water District, we've got monthly sampling at 17 sites.
That's correct.
All right. City of Plano, we've got, I think that's, the number is wrong, but we've got quarterly sampling at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sites, I think.
Yes, 7 sites. That's correct.
Tarrant Regional Water District, we've got twice a year to monthly sampling at 72 sites and yields at 7 sites.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
All right. All right. Upper Trinity Regional Water District, we've got quarterly monitoring at 5 sites.
No changes for us.
All right. TRA, we've currently got 43 stations that we monitor quarterly, yields at 2 sites, and ALMs at unknown number yet. Right now, we're still working on that. All right, TCEQ, we have got twice a year to quarterly monitoring at 41 stations with yields at 3 sites and ALMs at 1 site.
Hi, Angela.
Yes.
This is Region 12. Liz, we only have one change in our sites, but we're still kind of toying with that. It's Cotton Bayou.
Okay.
At our above title site. We're having accessibility issues. Just the traffic is unbelievably bad now. So Rodney and Stacy last week did some recon, and it looks like we kind of narrowed it down to 2 different areas of where we're going to go. We're either going to move to station 22232, which is on I-10, but that is high up in the AU, which is not ideal. So our second option, which we still have to do recon on that, we're thinking about maybe launching a kayak and kind of going lower in the AU or upper in the AU, depending on where we're going to launch it from. And so we still haven't quite decided where we're going to go, but we are going to be moving our 1 site, 18696, somewhere else.
Okay, 18696. Okay.
Right. And this is Wilson Snyder in Region 9.
Uh-huh.
And I've already made the changes in the schedule, but of course we lost Lake Fairfield since Parks and Wildlife let it get away from them. So it's no longer on our schedule.
I know that was your favorite site too, wasn't it?
It was a favorite, yes.
For DFW, there's not going to be changes.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. Okay, so getting into the meat. So this is the document that some of y'all may have seen in previous years. Every year it gets a little more voluminous, I guess is the word. So just going through this document real quick. So we got a definitions page. This is defines what's the information that's in each of the columns of the integrated report and the abbreviations that TCQ uses. The next tab is the detail of the integrated report, just converted to Excel so that you can filter for your particular segments, or if you're just interested in certain parameters, it provides the date ranges that were used, the criteria that were used, and then the findings. So there's the individual finding for the data as presented for this period of record, and then occasionally some issues will get carried forward. So if, like, for example, this one here, this DO issue, the current data shows that there's no issue, but there was previously an impairment that was not addressed. So that impairment gets carried forward, and that's what that CF stands for. The next tab is the maps of the summary. So any of the segment that has an issue will be color coded to match the summary that is on this last tab here. The Then we've got our draft monitoring schedule. This was for if you had any, when I sent this out originally, if you had any changes, you could send it to me, but this is the draft. The final schedule will be posted on the LCRA CMS webpage. I believe the link is cms.lcra.org, which is where you can find basically the monitoring schedule for the entire state. But it'll also be in our amendment that's coming up. We'll have an amendment 3 that this will be incorporated into for the monitoring, starting September 1st of 24 of this year to August 31st of 2025 is the period that we're working on right now. All right, and the last tab, this is the meat of the document. This is where we'll be spending the rest of our time today going over this. So here, this is just a combo of data from about 4 or 5 different sources. So here we've got the summary of the integrated report. Again, it's just if there's any impairment or any concern, it lists that here. That doesn't mean that it's only nitrate and total phosphorus that have a concern in this segment. So other parameters that were assessed under general use, we're fully supporting or had no concerns. In this section here, we've got the summary of who sampled at this station. And this is for the entire period of record of the state's SWCM-IS database. So this goes all the way back to 1968. So if you expand the columns here, you'll see who sampled at this station. And then the columns over here, this is just the notes, my current notes and my past notes. So basically the notes from this year will get transmitted over there. So I'm keeping a running copy of all the notes over time. And this only goes back to, I think I just started this in 2021. So again, that's what I'm saying. It's going to get bigger. We're going to basically be focusing on this current note column for the rest of the meeting here. And so this is just, this is all discussion from here on out to, see what we need to do, how we need to address things, if anybody can pick things up. And let's get into it. So currently, I believe this is what you were talking about a while ago, that for the Region 12 staff, the Cotton Bayou, there's a DIO concern impairment, in the segment that I don't know if it's being addressed with current monitoring. So my question is, because this is an impairment based on a DO grab, do we need to be doing DIELs in this segment to address this impairment? So I guess that's a question for.
This is Laura Reichman from TCQ.
Hey.
Correct. You need to do 24-hour DO to delist, even if it is data from a grab sample. That's that's caused the listing.
Okay.
This is Region 12. We have not, at this moment, we don't have any plans to do 24-hour DOs there. One, we haven't been requested to, but it also hasn't quite been on our radar. We've have quite a few full plate as it is.
Yeah.
So it's, we're trying to, this is our first year that we've had a reduced schedule. And so we're just really trying to make it through the year with what we have and see what we can take on the following year. But we haven't quite made it through the fiscal year yet is one of our issues.
Okay.
So we could definitely talk about this maybe next year if that's all right.
Hey Liz, this is Laura. Also, since you guys are out there, since there is a DO impairment there, could you also, just look around since you're doing recon in that area anyway and find out where might be a good place to deploy a 24-hour sonde, just, as you guys do your work. Since that's not
we can definitely look into that.
All right. Okay, yeah, so I'll just add my notes in here as per this discussion that this will be something that we'll talk about in future years. All right. Next is Lake Livingston, and Laura, you just answered my question. Well, if it's a concern, I guess we would just need additional grab data. Currently, there is no monitoring. It's in this little riverine portion of the reservoir. the TC or Lake Livingston samples upstream, and then they've got another site that's a little further downstream over here, but there hasn't been any recent monitoring at this station. So I'm guessing we just need to do a little more DO grab monitoring to address this concern.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So concerns just need additional grab. All right, moving over to Bedias Creek, we've got some concerns for E. coli and chlorophyll, and currently there's no monitoring in that segment, so we're going to need some additional monitoring up there. That's up in this neck of the woods in assessment unit 0803F01. There's currently monitoring in the assessment unit 2. Okay, and then for the Trinity River, there's 2 assessment units that there's just no access, period. It's in this area. There's not a single bridge crossing along this entire reach of the Trinity. However, I don't think we'll ever be able to get routine monitoring in that reach or in those 2 assessment units. But because, being on the Trinity River, being downstream from the wastewater treatment plants, I feel confident that if we do have concerns in the upstream and the downstream assessment units, that they're still going to be existing there. So I think that's just something that's going to live on the integrated report forever until future development maybe comes in and builds a bridge over the river there. So I think that's just going to live out there forever. Going down to Waukena Creek, Tarrant Regional Water District just added monitoring at in Assessment Unit 01 to address the that will address the E. coli and chlorophyll A monitoring. So we've got that covered. Let's see. Upper Keachai Creek, we had impairments for dissolved oxygen that previously weren't being addressed with diel monitoring. Lake Livingston has picked that up. There's currently been 4 diel samples collected, and the lowest DO minimum was 4.6 and the lowest DO average was 6.5. So that potentially will come off the list in future assessments. I believe Lake Livingston is getting 2 samples a year for 5 years, so it'll take a few more years to complete that data set. Lower Keachai Creek 0804K, it doesn't look, now again, I may be wrong, I'm looking at the monitoring schedule and the data that was in the database. It doesn't look like E. coli are being collected at the Lower Keachai site, maybe due to hold times and travel times, things like that. Going to Bassett Creek, that is the creek that was downstream of the Sanderson Farms facility and the City of Palestine wastewater treatment facility. Those both had impairments. That monitoring was conducted, I believe, by TCQ and Parks and Wildlife. So is there potential that we may need to revisit that monitoring in the future? That would be some discussion that we would need to have with TCQ to determine when and where and what kind of, there was several sites. I believe we did like 5 or 6 sites that we monitored along that area. So we just need to determine how best to address that. So going down to 0805 Upper Trinity. Oh yeah, here we go. This is the location. So this is the Sanderson Farm plant. That's the City of Palestine plant. And so this assessment unit and this assessment unit had the impairments for Bendix and fish. So chlorophyll A in 080501, this is, we dropped our monitoring here because we had like 2 or 3 years of monitoring. There's, this being downstream of the wastewater treatment plants, we've got ample nutrients in the river. So we kind of expect that chlorophyll A and nutrient concerns are gonna remain in perpetuity. Or until, standards, permit limits change or things like that. So we took our resources out of that out of that assessment unit and have put them elsewhere. Okay, going down to Cedar Creek 0805. This is Cedar Creek in Dallas. We did a bio there a number of years ago. We had a concern for benthics, and so we might go back out to this site in the future. We originally picked this location to monitor for ALMs because we had a feeling there was, it kind of tied in. We did a PCB dioxin and furan study, and we thought that there were some sources for those contaminants coming down that creek. So we wanted to do an ALM there. So we might revisit that ALM in the future. The two sites that we had on Red Oak Creek and 10 Mile Creek, we originally had those on there for 5 years of monitoring. We have decided to make those two stations long-term. So we will continue monitoring those indefinitely. And I keep forgetting to advance my slide. So this is that Cedar Creek ALM site. There's some industry up here. There's also some industry further upstream, and that's where we thought that there potentially were some PCB dioxin and furan sources coming down the line. Okay, let's see. Little Fossil Creek, we monitored here a few years ago. I think we've monitored here a couple of times, or maybe Fort Worth. I can't remember. It's hidden in the columns there. When we monitored it from 2017 to 22, our geomean was 504 MPN. It was only weakly correlated to flow, so we think that there's probably both runoff and direct sources, but the station, this 17129, is downstream from this area right here where there's a lot of horse activity. So we think that this might be a potential source. I think this is called Fossil Ridge Stables. We think this might be a potential source. And when we looked at it on Street View on Google Earth, I think, I can't tell for sure, but it looks like this is two sets of horse tracks in the creek. It could also be four-wheeler. I can't really tell. I can't zoom in any further. So is this potentially something that City of Fort Worth could enforce if this is continuing to be a high E. coli issue? Have you looked at it before? Is this something that you could enforce? Or do we need to have more data collected there to confirm?
I'm still pretty new to kind of program management with City of Fort Worth, but I can definitely highlight this one and check in with some of our team members who've potentially been involved with this site previously. But we could definitely look into, potentially adding it as like a site to start collecting data from again if needed.
Okay. And I can't remember. Like I said, it's hidden in here. It's in the files. It's just I collapsed those columns. There's a reason that we sampled there, and I think it might have been because y'all had done some sampling there in the past. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, if we can have a meeting offline too to discuss what we think might be the best course of action here. Next, we have got okay, so the chlorophyll A concern is being addressed. So where is that? Tarrant Regional picking up at 10969. So yeah, they've got the concern for chlorophyll there covered. West Fork above Bridgeport. Okay, so in this area, the TDS, chloride, sulfate, all of those are assessed as a average of all of the data in the entire segment, not by AU. So that's why you see the impairment here, even though there's no monitoring that's ever happened here. It's because the data is applied to the entire segment. I believe that the TDS impairment here in this segment was based on a conversion from specific conductance. And that conversion is based on specific conductance times 0.65. That may not be 100% accurate for this segment. So if we want to confirm that for TDS specifically, chloride is also elevated, which kind of makes me think that TDS would also still be elevated regardless of if it's a conversion or a direct measurement of TDS. Also, there has been a request to revise the surface water quality standards. That revision was made in 2010, but it hasn't been approved by EPA yet. And if these revisions are ever approved by EPA, that may go away. Okay, now we're on to 816 Lake Waxahachie. We have a station in here at 10980. Now I know that this is the station that's being used for the numeric nutrient criteria. There was an event a couple quarters back where the guys actually just walked out from the bank because we couldn't launch a boat, but they just walked out to the site. It's very shallow. Even when the lake is full, it's very shallow. So we were wondering, should we move the stations to a more open water station? There currently is another station. Nobody's monitoring, but there's an existing station over here at the intake. However, if we drop a 400-meter circle on both of these stations, right smack in the middle of those is a fairly deep section of the reservoir. So here we've got, it's about 38 feet deep, where we're currently monitoring. Maximum depth is probably about 8 feet deep. So question for TCQ, should we move the station? Does it matter? Currently, we've got the water is being transferred from the Bardwell Reservoir into Lake Waxahachie, and the outfall is right here. So the station may not be entirely representative of water in Waxahachie itself, and maybe more representative of water from Bardwell. So what is TCQ's take on this? Or should we have this conversation offline?
Hey, Angela, I think that if we can have this conversation offline, because there's a couple of issues with assessment of this and also what is representative. So with, myself and Kalista, and I don't know if anybody else from TCQ, like the nutrient coordinator for standards, now would want to join into this. That's probably, something we can have. Also, then we can talk about it for longer without bogging down y'all's meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Laura, that site ID is listed in Appendix F, so you will need someone on the standards team in that meeting.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, is the Appendix F part, because that involves a standards issue.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll see about setting up a meeting with y'all here. Probably, I don't know. The rest of April and May are looking fairly busy for us. I'm sure it's twice as busy for y'all, so we'll just start batting some things around. Okay, thank you. All right, next we have got Cedar Creek Reservoir. So we have several coves in this reservoir that were monitored a number of years ago. I believe it was specifically for like a cove study. That data was submitted to TCQ, and it resulted in these issues with impairments in those for pH in those coves. Now, again, there was a revision request in the 2014 standards revision to change the standard from, I believe it's 6 to 8.5 is what the current pH standard is, to change it to the 6.5 to 9. But again, that hasn't been approved by EPA yet, so we're still assessing against the 1/2 point lower. And then we also have a DO concern up here in the Cedar Creek Cove Assessment Unit 13 that we just need to get some DO grab sampling in order to address that concern. Moving on to 820 Rowlett Creek, we do have a little bit of overlap in sampling between us and the city of Dallas. We had been monitoring this for the Rowlett Watershed Protection Plan. And I think a couple of years ago, we thought, do we need to keep doing this site? Could we drop it? However, it being a watershed protection plan, more data is better. So we might stick with it. There's a little bit of misalignment between the parameters that they need and what Dallas is collecting. So I think it's just nitrate and TKN might not have been collected by Dallas. So again, this may be a conversation that Jessica, that me and you can have offline to see if we want to do anything. Or again, if more data is better because it's a watershed protection plan, we'll just leave it as is. Okay.
Yeah, let me know if you want to have a further conversation about that.
Okay. Are you are not collecting TKN and nitrate at that site, correct?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. So yeah, I'll set up a meeting with you. I guess we probably need to get a hold of the folks that are doing the watershed protection plan group and talk with them and see if their needs are still. Okay, 822. Let's see. We had an impairment for cadmium added in 24, so it's gone on and off the list a couple of times over the years. It's in there currently. The chronic criterion for cadmium is 0.27. The LOQ for is 0.3. So that's the LOQ. Is that the AWRL set by TCQ? Anyway, we have identified this. This is the station. So 16438. That's the station where Dallas, Jessica, y'all are sampling at this station. We kind of looked through the watershed to see where metals may be coming from. Now, again, this is also based on, I think Ryan jumped in here. We talked about, or Charlie, we talked about this the other day. I think that this was based on a single data point that was elevated. However,
Yeah, so
Yes.
single data point. There were actually 2 data points, but they were spread out over the 7-year assessment period. So about like every 10 years, we've had just one hit.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we Google Earth ran through the watershed, we could only really identify one potential place where we think that this issue is coming from. So we think that these have just been single releases, maybe. So there's a metals fabrication. There's 3 metals fabrication facilities in this little industrial area that's immediately upstream from 16438. So we're kind of wondering, do we need to maybe potentially get some sampling that's upstream of from some of these tributaries? Maybe I think we've got, what are these called? Fresno, Dudley, and Indian Creeks up here on the east side in Carrollton. So that probably is a question that we need to have with TCQ, Jessica at Dallas, and our group, and also the city of Carrollton. I think we talked with Krista Pender, and they might be interested in joining the program as well. So like I said, we think that this is single events that may be runoff, because one of the events, it was less than 1 day since the rain. I don't know what the best course of action here, so we would need to have a more in-depth conversation with City of Dallas and TCQ on this one. Here's the next issue here. So we've got a station down here that's immediately downstream. We've got a concern for chlorophyll A on the Elm Fort. This will probably continue to be a concern on the list because the station is immediately downstream from the outfall, and it's probably mirroring what is seen in the chlorophyll A levels in the lake. So I think in reservoirs you go from 26.7 micrograms per liter to the criteria, and streams is 14.1. So it's going to be in that, it's always going to be elevated coming directly out of the lake there. All right, so 823, we have got on Stewart Creek, we've got some concerns for nutrients. Now the site is immediately downstream of a wastewater treatment facility, so those concerns will likely remain. The treatment wastewater effluent is nutrient rich. There's just currently the technology for advanced nutrient removal is not widely available or cost effective right now. Maybe in 20 years, this is a different conversation. 824, same thing. There's some chlorophyll concerns and nutrient concerns. Again, the site's downstream from a treatment plant, so both of those concerns will likely remain. So 824. Then we've got Denton Creek. We had some monitoring upstream. Is this upstream? No, this is downstream. So we had been monitoring, City of Dallas is monitoring a little bit further downstream. So we've gone ahead and dropped our monitoring at that station because the E. coli concern went away. The nitrate will probably stay because there is a wastewater treatment facility upstream. All right, Grapevine, not Grapevine. Yes, Grapevine. This is where we're working. We're monitoring in this this upper portion of the reservoir because there was a high pH impairment that wasn't being addressed. Current monitoring shows that our pH is ranging from 7.8 to 8.7, so it's still a little high. It doesn't exceed the standard. So eventually this will probably fall off the list. So we have a couple of areas where we've got no monitoring in a pretty wide swath of the Metroplex. So we're just kind of wondering, should we pick up some sampling here? We've got a couple of ideas. We've got this area that's upstream of Grapevine Lake on Denton Creek. So we've got a couple of stations here that we've identified for potentials. If we monitor just at this station on Elizabeth Creek, I think, Ryan, we're picking up this big portion of the watershed. Again, this is an entire area that's not being monitored. If we pick that station up down here, we're getting this whole area that's not being monitored. There's not great access down here, so we'd have to go out and scout and see if we can get that. But anyway, that's a thought that we're having, is adding a station right in there. Ryan, did you have anything to add?
Just some background for everyone. So this would get the Alliance Airport area, the Haslett area in northern Fort Worth. So we would be potentially collecting the watershed of Texas Motor Speedway, a large rail yard, an airport, and then a large industrial park, along with an area that is currently undergoing a bunch of development, just normal neighborhoods and stuff up in that area. So trying to get some baseline before those neighborhoods come in, potentially, to help us understand what's going to be changing in the future in this part of the basin.
Mm-hmm. So I'd say there's probably a 95% chance that we're going to be starting a monitoring station up here. Which one of the two locations is to be determined based on scouting. Benthic macroinvertebrates. So this was again done a number of years ago. I think it was done in 2018 or 19. We're going to revisit this site this summer. If flows go down, this is immediately downstream of the Benbrook Dam. So if flows stay up, there's the potential that we may not be able to get this site because it being immediately downstream of the dam, you know, if it scours, we've got to wait a minimum of 2 weeks. It probably need to be an entire month before we can go out there and monitor there. So we are currently watching flows to see what happens in that area, see if we can get out there. Mary's Creek, we had a concern for E. coli, and DO and Fort Worth is picking up that station, so that's covered. Okay, 831, 831A, and 833, we've got some DO issues here. We have gone to these stations a couple of times in two different, so we've monitored these stations for enough to collect the assessment period at least twice. So the question that we're having here is, do we collect more of the same data, more diel data, or do we do a UAA? Our thoughts here is that this portion of the stream is very low flow. It's very flashy. We've gone out there when we initially started monitoring there, we went out and scouted, and the water was gone. We went and scouted the day after it rained, and the water was already gone in some of these areas. So we probably need a UAA. So we need to have a conversation with TCQ about starting some UAAs up there. And I think Ryan had some questions about, is that on the list? Is that the thoughts? Can we get a copy? Ryan, go.
Yeah, this was just something mentioned last year in the meeting, so I thought it got on the list, but yeah, we were just wondering here in the Trinity for those on the standards team, if you could provide us with a list of just like previous, current UAs and RUAs, and then just if you have any plans for the future for stuff in the basin, just so that way we can kind of coordinate our monitoring around and start to get data points for if we're down on, say, like dissolved oxygen and samples, and that might be holding up a potential UA. And we're also happy to start discussions about like potentially helping out and maybe running those projects if need be. So
yeah, so TCQ will probably be calling on y'all here shortly, again, for another thing, to just start having some conversations to see how this needs to be done. If we can run it, if we can help, or how that process needs to go. So that was Clear Fork. Yeah, I think that all of that will be dealt with. Richland Chambers Reservoir, we just submitted a change here. We've got a station that's right at the interface. Based on the current segment boundaries, the station here is currently identified as being in the reservoir. However, we did a little work with Tarrant Regional Water District, and we discovered that the change in elevation, I think it's 315 feet elevation is what's defining the boundary of the reservoir. And so 315 feet is right roughly in here. So everything above here behaves as a stream. So we have submitted a request to TCQ to change that. And because it's in a classified segment, it has to go through standards. But then that would move this concern and impairment out of the reservoir and into segment 837, which is the stream upstream of Richland Chambers. Okay, 836 and B and C, Cedar and Grape Creek. We had monitored at these two sites in a previous years, and here's 21. I think we did it 19, 20, 21. And we're monitoring again. I think, let's see, we're going to be monitoring it until, okay, we're going to be monitoring it through FY25. So we'll reassess this in 2026. Now, do we need to do a UAA or do we need to do more DIEL after 2025? There are some, it does appear that there are some DO issues here. So again, that's a question that we would have, or a conversation we'd have with TCQ. I have a comment here from last year from Robin Cipher. She wondered if the monitoring station here was representative. The station, do I have a, yeah. The station 22055, if that's representative of the reach, because it's a intermittent with pools. So based on our monitoring out there, it does appear that it is representative. We did have 3 events where the flow severity was reported as 1 and the DIEL samples were collected in the pool. So it does appear that this station is representative of an intermittent with perennial pools. Another site that we're looking at, there's currently no monitoring on Big Bear Creek upstream of where, I guess I didn't have a map for that, upstream of where DFW is sampling. So we're kind of wondering, should we add a station up there to monitor in that undefined area? This is a pretty large watershed. So we could potentially pick up a station there or on Little Bear Creek where there's no sampling at all. Oh, there is the map. Okay, yeah. So here's the other gap in the monitoring. So we've got sampling right here and Big Bear continues on up here. So there's nothing in there. And then Little Bear comes in through here. So we're thinking about maybe picking up a station up in here somewhere.
Charlie, can you just provide a brief description of this area for people?
Certainly. So the area on the north side of Fort Worth in this Keller, Colleyville, Hazlitt area, it's pretty interesting. It's currently a mix with some modern and older residential areas, but it's also got a fair bit of rural and semi-rural land. There's a lot of ranchettes. There's a lot of old farmland. And there's definitely some development going on in the western sections of especially, but we haven't really had a lot of monitoring going on there, so we don't have that deep a look from a water chemistry perspective what's going on, and we could really use that, especially as it becomes more urbanized and developed in the further west areas of that part of the metroplex.
So again, just like we were talking about, this area, up here, there's a pretty good chance that we'll probably be adding a station in this area somewhere. Okay, Fish Creek, we had that habitat and benthic macroinvertebrates. I talked about this in the meeting this morning. We think that those concerns were because where we monitored the ALM there wasn't really representative of the stream. So we went back and did another one a little bit further upstream, still in the same general area, but just a little more natural, a little bit more representative of the entire reach, and that data should be showing up in the in future integrated reports. And also, we have been conducting diel monitoring out here for 2 years at that station. Do I have, yeah, at the station here. We monitored it for 2 years. We didn't really find any DO issues. And looking further into the data, we think that the issue is actually coming from down here, closer to the headwaters of Mountain Creek Reservoir. This area flows through a golf course, so it's pretty wide. There's no shading, so the water's probably getting hot. There's probably, so that it's probably those two things that are causing the DO issues, because warmer water doesn't. Okay, Asiatu, I see your comment. The DFW airport recently installed a flow sensor on Little Bear Creek. Okay, great. So yeah, we'll talk with you when we get ready to figure out where we're going to be monitoring up there. Thank you for that, Asiatu. So yeah, we think that the issue is coming from here. So we're going to go ahead and take our resources out of the diels that we were conducting further upstream, because that doesn't appear to be where the issue is coming from. Okay, 841Q, we're almost to the end here. We've got a station here at Fish Creek. We have an E. coli impairment here, and the station has been sampled by various people throughout the years. So we just need to determine, do we need to get more E. coli monitoring? Would more recent monitoring be beneficial? I can't remember off the top of my head if this segment is part of the North Central Texas Council of Governments I-Plan. Might be. Those are conversations we're having internally. Okay, so there's these 3 locations that have been monitored in here, and that just what we need to have conversations internally about.
Angela.
Yes.
Oh, just a quick note, going all the way back to 0804.
Okay, let me open that.
Lower Keechee, that's just an inadvertent error on the bacteria. We do collect bacteria on
Okay.
Lower Keechee.
Okay, let me bring that. I think I'm sharing this page.
And also, I'll talk to you or Laura about, you said something about maybe another assessment unit need to be sampled on BDI, so I'll look into that.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey, Angela, real quick. Bonnie, I see you're on the call. I was wondering if you could provide any RUAA updates for the stuff that is on Lower Keechee, or the stuff about to be kicking off here in the Trinity.
Yeah, actually, I was just about to unmute myself. Yeah, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Bonnie Evans. I'm with the TCQ headquarters. I'm the bacteria coordinator, so I work on all the recreational use attainability analysis, RUAAs. So yeah, I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be wrapping up the recommendations, or at least the draft recommendations for those last 2. Lower Keechee and Black Cypress Bayou, and then currently we have Ash Creek.
Dosser and Darrett, right?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so we completed a couple of public outreaches. Just for some initial informational meetings to kickstart those RUAAs, did some recon. So hopefully, this next couple month or 2, Tier, that's who's contracted to work on these projects, will get out there and start their first field sampling this summer. But I did also want to mention, hopefully, again, in the next week or 2, there's quite a few, water bodies that are at least, during the initial screening, could potentially be good RUA candidates in the future. And in the next week or 2, you may see an email from me. I'm going to email out a survey form. Basically, just since y'all are the boots on the ground We just really would love to hear your perspective of if you know of any recreational activities out there, or if there are none, or kind of what are some hindrances of why some people may not be out there recreating. All that kind of stuff is really good information just for us to know if we should proceed forward with an RUAA on those water bodies. So just keep an eye out. So if you see an email from me, that's exactly what I'm requesting. So appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you very much.